The year was 1967, and the road to Briar Falls was a two-lane ribbon of cracked asphalt that always seemed to stretch longer than it should. Jacob Hensley had driven it 100 times, but tonight it felt different. Too quiet, too hollow, like the dark itself had weight. His radio had died an hour earlier, reduced to a soft hiss of static no matter how hard he smacked the dial. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, not because he expected anyone to be behind him, but because every time he looked away, he felt watched. Briar Falls was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, but nobody talked about the old Willow Ridge orphanage perched on the hill. It had burned down in 1954, taking nearly 30 children with it. The official report blamed faulty wiring. Locals blamed something else, something older, something wrong. Jacob never believed in ghost stories, but as he passed the charred ruins on his way into town, a chill crept through his jacket. The building, now nothing more than a blackened skeleton under the moonlight, seemed to pulse with a faint glow, like embers refusing to die. When he pulled into his uncle's house, he found the old man sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, staring at the hill with glassy eyes. "You shouldn't look at it at night," his uncle muttered without greeting. "They look back." Jacob tried to laugh, but the sound felt thin. Inside, the house smelled of old newspapers and wood polish. His uncle's hands shook as he poured coffee. "Strange things happening again," he whispered. "Children saying they hear footsteps near the ridge, doors opening on their own. And last week, someone saw lights inside the orphanage." Jacob frowned. "It's abandoned." His uncle nodded slowly. "That's why it's worse." That night, Jacob slept in the guest room, but sleep didn't last long. He woke to the sound of children laughing, soft, distant, echoing from outside. At first he thought it was a dream, but then he heard footsteps running across the porch. He sat up, heart hammering, and the laughing stopped instantly, like someone had cut a wire. The next day, Jacob walked to the remains of the orphanage despite his uncle's protests. The ash-covered ground crunched beneath his shoes. A warped metal swing set still stood behind the ruins, swaying though there was no wind. He turned to leave, only to hear a small voice whisper behind him, "You're late." He spun around. Nobody. That night, the footsteps returned. Slow, careful, closer. Jacob crept to the window and saw small shapes, child-sized silhouettes, standing motionless in the yard, not moving, not breathing, just staring. He blinked, and they vanished like smoke. His uncle burst into the room moments later, pale as milk. "They know you're here," he rasped. "They remember new faces." Jacob demanded answers, but the only thing his uncle would say was, "The fire didn't kill them. It changed them." The next morning, Jacob found tiny black handprints on the outside of his bedroom window. Ash handprints. He scrubbed them away, but the glass felt warm, as if touched recently. Too recently. On the third night, the house itself seemed to breathe. Floorboards expanded and groaned like ribs cracking. Doors rattled. The lights flickered in patterns, on, off, long pause. Like code. Then the children came inside. He heard them scamper down the hallway, giggling, whispering secrets with burned-out voices. His uncle collapsed in a chair, muttering prayers. When Jacob stepped into the hall, he saw them clearly for the first time. Figures of soot and ember, eyes glowing faint orange like dying coals. They didn't walk so much as flicker. "Come play," one hissed, its jaw splitting too wide. Jacob ran. He fled toward the orphanage, thinking foolishly that confronting the source might end everything. Inside the ruins, heat wrapped around him like a blanket. He heard the crackle of flames that didn't exist, and then he saw them. Dozens of tiny shapes standing in a circle, surrounding something burned into the floorboards. A spiraling symbol etched deep into the wood. When Jacob backed away, the children moved with him, mirroring him, boxing him in. Their voices layered over each other. "Stay with us. Stay. Stay." A cold hand gripped his wrist. Another touched his face, smearing ash across his cheek. He screamed and tore free, sprinting toward the woods. He didn't stop running until he reached the highway. Police found him wandering at dawn, face pale, clothes covered in soot that wasn't his. When they searched the orphanage later that day, they found no footprints, no symbol, no evidence anyone had been there at all. But his uncle was gone, vanished from the house without a trace, the rocking chair still swaying slightly as if someone had just stood up from it. Jacob was questioned for hours. Every answer sounded insane, even to him. The officers eventually released him, shaking their heads, saying his mind must have snapped in the old haunted town. Jacob left Briar Falls that night, vowing never to return. But sometimes, when he tries to sleep, he hears them again. Tiny footsteps running across floors that aren't there. Laughter drifting through the walls. And the faint, smoky scent of burned wood. The worst part came months later in the mail. An envelope with no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed Jacob standing inside the orphanage ruins, surrounded by child-shaped shadows. And in the bottom corner, written in ash, "You're still late."